And I request Professor Borse to introduce Professor Ambat Vijay Kumar.
Okay, thank you, sir. It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Ambat Vijay Kumar. He is currently Professor Emeritus in the Department of Mathematics, Cochin University of Science and Technology. He has been there in the same university for more than 30 years. He did his PhD and MSc also from the same university. Professor Ambat Vijay Kumar is very well-known graph theorist. Besides graph theory, he is also interested in history of mathematics and popularization of mathematics and talent such things. He has published more than 70 research papers in very good journals like Discrete Mathematics, DMGT, DAMA, and AKC, and so on. A very good thing about Professor Ambat Vijay Kumar is a very good speaker actually. He's a well-known speaker. He gives talks in different conferences and workshops. He's very busy in that sense. So he has visited at least 20 times different countries for giving such talks. And he has organized numerous workshops and conferences and have held different positions like chairs and academic secretary of organizations like Ramanujan Mathematical Society, and is associated with many mathematical organizations of India and also abroad. He has completed 14 PhD students. In popularization of mathematics or in history of mathematics, it is his another area of interest, and in that area he has written 50 articles in English and in his mother tongue also, in Malayalam language. So he has also held some administrative positions in university and in academic things related to government. He also has worked for Olympiad activities, and he was regional coordinator. And most important thing is he has a large network of mathematicians. And if he organize any conference, then I don't know how he managed to get international speakers, not international, international mathematicians actually. I saw it when he organized, I think last year, that a very well-known conference of international conference of number theory and discrete mathematics. So we were part of that, and you see the huge galaxy of mathematicians were the speakers that time. And so I welcome Professor Ambat Vijay Kumar for this session, and I also thank him for accepting our invitation for delivering lectures in this workshop. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yashwant. Good morning to all of you. I'm audible and my presentation is clear, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah, very much. Yes.
Good morning.
I want the answers from participants.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very clear.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's
I
clear.
have some nostalgic memories of Pune University because I just told Ganesh, I came there as a participant of a summer school in 1981, where people from Tata Institute were giving talks. Participants included Devendra Prasad, Suri, and many others. Then 94, again as a participant of a refresher course, UGC refresher course, just like you are doing it. So I know what is happening in your mind now. What this fellow will talk, they will talk from the air, so we will not understand anything, and he will talk about basic theorems and then he will talk about advanced theorems, nothing of this sort. Okay, so we will spend about 1.5 hours cutting jokes, telling stories and so on. In this process, we will tell you some mathematics also, because I have to talk some mathematics also. My first request is, please ask questions, or whenever you want to have any clarifications for the concepts, definitions, or if you don't know anything which I am talking, you please feel free to stop me. This is not a one-sided business. You have come to this is what's called faculty development program or enrichment program. So you should take away some materials with you. Unfortunately, it is not offline, but we will try to be as interactive as possible. So I will go slow. There is nothing, as I said, there is absolutely no syllabus to be covered. Whatever I have prepared, I will talk about that. So thanks to SPP University, I have visited this university as SP University, as I told you, in 1980s. So there was a hotel in front of the main gate. I don't remember the name, where you to have sabudan vada and all that. Okay, so of the meetings. So today is happened to be just noticed before I started. Today is the birthday of Srikantai. Okay, that was quite a coincidence. I never felt like that only morning, because there is something interesting. I had, as Yashwant mentioned, last 10 years I had organized 2 very wonderful conferences. One is the satellite conference of the ICM in 2010. The logo was Srikantai graph. Very surprising thing is I have not met Srikantai at all. Okay, suddenly I wanted to change this good old logo of Peterson graph. Wherever you go, you see Peterson. But I want to show some Indian people also. And obviously, Srikantai was the best choice. And in the second conference, which was my retirement conference 2018, there also my students told that the logo should be the same as 2010 logo. So in the 2 of the major conferences which I organized, logo was Srikantai graph. So you may think, what is so special about Srikantai graph? And before that, I would talk something special about Srikantai himself. The greatness of Professor Srikantai, who was close to you because he was working in Bombay University for several years. So I start my presentation with a quote from a great inspiring teacher. And one good thing about him and me is that I was fortunate enough to interact with him several times. Okay, at least 6 to 7 times one-to-one. There will not be anybody, even he will ask his secretary to go out, because he is such a person, that very encouraging person. He gives us the confidence to talk about anything. He will pretend that he doesn't know anything even about missile. I know better than him. So that's the way he gives confidence to talk. So we have talked about mathematics, about history and such things. So I take quotes from him whenever I start this, especially after the last 5 years. So this quotation is, don't read success stories, you will only get a message. Read failure stories, you will get some ideas to get success. So whether you are a student or a teacher, what you require is the confidence to talk. Don't bother about who is the audience. Even if Professor Srikantai is sitting in front of me and hearing about him, the confidence that you have, for that, you have to have a self-confidence. That is more important than whatever you want to talk. So if you read any success story, you may not get any new thing. But if you look at the failure stories, there are plenty of people who had a failure in the beginning. The most important thing is Dr. Kalam himself, who went to for an interview. The aircraft academy told him that he's unfit to become a pilot. You know what happened after that? Okay, the airport academy told that he's unfit to become a pilot, and he became, whatnot. He's called a missile man. Similar is the story with Abraham Lincoln, who was defeated several times in several live as well as some contests, and finally became the 16th president of US. So failure is part of success, and behind the success there should be a failure, and only you will know how to do things. So my request to my fellow teachers is that you please feel free to ask questions, bring in self-confidence in your profession, and then try to be very inspiring teacher. So Srikantai, one of the photos, I will show plenty of photos of Srikantai from various age groups. So this is Professor Srikantai, one of the oldest, most recent photo. He was born on 19th October 1917 and passed away on 21st April 2020. So at the age of 102, he passed away. Okay. So I have a collection of some names. So let me tell you one more thing. You keep watching these slides very carefully. I will ask the questions just like in a class so that it becomes interactive. And whoever answers my questions more, I will send you a gift. Okay, so be ready for accepting challenges. So each and every slide, you have to be careful. What question I can ask, I don't know. That becomes, I have not prepared any question. So I can ask what is the date of birth of Srikanth. So you can try to answer in the chat box, and I will request Ganesh or Yashwant to keep track of the answers. And whoever gets the correct answers, so we will send you the gift. Accepted? Is it okay for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Fine. So any discussion on Srikanth should start with two great people. One is R.C. Bose, and the other is obviously Euler. So Leonhard Euler, popularly known as the analysis incarnate, that is the avatar of analysis. And he is the man behind many things. And Srikanth became famous, or started calling him as one of the Euler spoiler, after Srikanth disproved, along with R.C. Bose, a conjecture of Euler. I had given on 2007 a lecture on Euler because to celebrate 300th birth anniversary of Euler, I gave a talk in my university, which I am going to repeat here also about his famous problems. You must understand the power of Euler. I will, Euler was totally blind. So R.C. Bose, best known for his design theory and error correcting code. There is a BCH code now, algebraic coding theory. Bose, B stands for Bose and C stands for Ray Choudhury, and H stands for a French mathematician, Hock and Gam. So BCH codes is a famous algebraic code, and he was working in Indian Statistical Institute, Calcutta most of the time. He had gone abroad also. And to talk about Leonhard Euler, he belongs to, though not technically he is not a member of Bernoulli family, but he was fostered and encouraged by the great Johann Bernoulli and others. So his advisor was Johann Bernoulli. His son is also a mathematician, Johann Albert Euler. And one great thing about him is that he was totally blind for about 17 years. So he lost his right eye in 1738 and in the left eye in 1766, and still he worked in 14 different areas, including mathematics, music theory, theory of chip design, and so on. Okay. I spent 1 or 2 slides more about Euler because he's, as I told you, he's analysis incarnate. So in 1988, the British mathematics educator David Wells asked the mathematical community. So this is the first question that I am going to ask you also. What is the, according to you, the most prominent and the best theorem that you like in any branch of mathematics at any level? Okay, so a competition was held and there was a tie for second place. Observe that the tie was between Euler and Euclid, all-time great. Okay, Euler's polyhedral formula, what is it? Number of vertices minus number of edges plus number of faces is equal to 2. So take any polyhedra, for example, your chalk box, it's a cube. So each face is a cycle, 4 cycle. I mean a quadrilateral. So it's a regular polyhedra, regularity with respect to the number of vertices adjacent to it, and regularity with respect to the face. It comes in topological graph theory and graph theory. So the Euler polyhedral formula is V minus E plus F is equal to 2. So the other choice was there are infinite number of primes. So these two theorems became the second prize, and the first prize was obviously e raised to I pi plus 1 is equal to 0. E raised to I pi is cos pi plus I sin pi. And why is that it is a magic equation? Because it involves the real constants 1 and 0. The other is E is irrational, I is imaginary, Y is transcendental, irrational, and so on. Okay, we don't know anything about e raised to pi and pi raised to e. That's a question that I like very much. Which is greater? Okay, so second question is which is greater, e raised to pi or pi raised to e? Okay, there are plenty of proofs. Now, there are infinite number of primes. Can anyone talk about try to give a 1 or 2 line proof of that there are infinite number of primes? Participants, please. If you don't know, it doesn't matter. We will discuss some other points. I asked you, can you give
By contradiction?
Yeah, proof is basically by contradiction. Assume that
If there are finite primes, then you
Right.
can say P1, P2, Pn, you multiply then and add or subtract 1. That will be
Perfect.
next prime.
Yeah, so that is the basic. But it is also a proof using topology. That is something interesting. You try to Google and get a proof of infinitude of primes using topological arguments. Okay. Now, Euler is famous for introducing several notations and concepts like function, trigonometric function, Euler's constant, Greek letter sigma, the letter I, and so on. So all that I wanted to tell you is that Euler turned out to be all-time great. Okay. This is the mathematics different in the sense that where does mathematics comes in this Google search engine query? Or is there any mathematics? Is there any linear algebra or graph theory or probability theory? So what I did yesterday was I went to Google and asked Google to search the word SP University Pune. Okay. I got how many? 2,180,000,000 results in 0.61 seconds. Let me repeat. In 0.61 seconds, I got answer back because Google is a search engine, right? I'm giving some keyword. I can give any keyword. I can give, say, Ganesh Kadu. I can give as a keyword. What will the Google say? Google say Ganesh Kadu is a faculty member in SPP University and areas of interest is commutative algebra. All these things will come. Okay, so I wanted to know who is Savitribai Phule. Then I immediately got information that great leader in Maharashtra and all that. It was established in 1948. All such information I got by just giving a keyword SP University Pune. Fine. So my basic question is, which I am not going to answer now, is how could Google give the answer in 0.61 seconds? This much results in the database of Google about SP Pune University. I will also tell you some other exciting thing. If you Google today, this I did yesterday, maybe today or tomorrow, the same keyword SP University Pune, I may get more results in less number of times, less number of seconds. Okay, so I may need only 0.59 seconds or 0.56 seconds. I may get to 78,000,000 results. So my basic question, which I am not going to answer, is that how did Google know that this much results are there in its database and what is the mathematics behind it? My dear friends, let me tell you, there is hardcore linear algebra, graph theory, and probability theory comes in picture to give answer for such a query. More excitingly, how could I get more results when I do it repeatedly? Do it is a beautiful application of a theorem in matrix theory, what's called Perron-Frobenius theorem. So mathematics is invisible, it is there. Only thing is that we are not able to appreciate or we don't know where it is applied, and it is everywhere. Without mathematics, there is nothing. Okay, so seemingly different areas are there. So let me go to some other slides.
Excuse me, Professor Vijay Kumar Ambat. There is one participant who is not muted, Yogesh Rokade. He is not muted himself, and there is some noise coming from his device.
Okay, okay.
So he is logged in from 2 devices, and yeah. So Yogesh Rokade, please mute your device. You have logged in from 2 devices.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, whenever you please want to ask any question, you please unmute and ask. If you write in chat box, I am not be able to read it. So better talk. So I'm going to talk about a theory which just started with a handshake. You know, if two persons shake their hands, they are related, isn't it? They have become friends. In politics, they shake hands, they need not be friends. Okay. Two opposite leaders will shake hands and hug and all that. So people will think that they are friends, but no. Fine. But in Corona, you know, you are not supposed to shake hands, so no shake hands, but still the theory can go. So this is two persons shaking hands. Now there are 6 persons here shaking hands, but in a different way, because whoever you choose as the first person is shaking hands with the last person also. Okay, so this structure, what we call in graph theory, is a 6 cycle. Right. In chemistry, the 6 cycle represents a benzene molecule. So any any chemical compound which contains benzene has its molecular representation or graph theoretic representation involving a cycle of length 6. There are no cycles. What you get is a tree structure. I'll come to that tree structure later. Now look at this type of handshake. Each of them are shaking hands, but the last person is not shaking hands with the first one. Right. Therefore, you don't have a cycle. What we call is a path. Agreed? These are terminologies which you have seen for the last 2-3 days. If you still don't know the definition, I can repeat it. Now, this is another type of handshake where several persons shake hand with one person. That is, this could be a CEO of a company. Okay, subordinate staffs will say, okay, sir, go ahead. We are all with you. We are all confident with you. So this is what's called a star structure, K1N. So I started with a simple handshake between 2 people. There are 6 people, another some 5 or 10 or 12 people, and all people, many people shaking hands with one of them. Okay, so different type of hands, and the mathematics of handshakes is nothing but graph theory. So in graph theory, what you require is handshakes or basic symmetric relations. Fine. So I ask a question here. The question is this. Vinayak invites 6 guests to his birthday party. Rahul, Vijay, Amar, Subhash, Sujata, and Shruti. I think there are participants with these names. Okay, I think so. So Rahul asks, how many handshakes I have made? So I've got Vinayak is doing a birthday party, of course, with the information of the police, otherwise he will be in trouble. But there are only 6 people, so no problem, you can accommodate up to 20. So carefully, you took only 6 best friends, Rahul, Vijay, Amar, Subhash, Sujata, and Shruti. They are shaking hands with each other. So Rahul asks how many handshakes are there. So Amar, one of the guests told that there is 7 into 6, 42. So some other friend, Subhash, feels that it is too much. No. That much handshakes we have not done. So Sujata, it seems, wanted more time, as if it's a great problem. And I took an anticipatory bail. I told that I don't know the answer. But there was one girl, Shruti, she says 21. So 42, 21, 36, 47, whatnot. So what do you feel?
It's 21.
So you are supporting Shruti's answer?
Yes.
What do you feel, Amar? Do you want to change the answer? I think there is a participant by name Amar, right?
Yes.
Okay, you earlier gave me the answer 42. Now you just fun. Okay.
No, 21.
Yeah. So Amar knows the art of counting. So this is the starting point of graph theory, what's called Euler's fundamental lemma. Okay, Euler's fundamental theorem in combinatorics or graph theory. Okay. So tribute to Euler, when he solved the great problem, solution to a problem in the geometry of position, in 1736. So graph theory originated in 1736 with the solution of a bridge problem called Königsberg bridge problem. And this is the graph theoretical model of the Königsberg bridges problem. And you know, so I have fitted a model because I cannot show you these 7 bridges and 4 land areas now because there's no more there. So I will we have a graph theoretic model or discrete mathematical model. I'm stressing on this because I'll talk about mathematical modeling also. So 4 land areas and 7 bridges like this. I have to walk through each land area walk through each bridge exactly once and come back to the last point where I started. Okay, so that is a famous problem which was solved by Euler, that it is not possible because the corresponding multi-graph is not an Euler graph. Okay, so this is the great Euler again. There's a famous book by Emil Fellman on Leonhard Euler. And this is the gentleman J.J. Sylvester, James Joseph Sylvester, who introduced the word graph theory in literature for the first time. He's also the person who introduced the word matrix, determinant, and so on. Okay, so I have shown Euler's face at several times. Now, there is a beautiful book, Graph Theory, 1736-1936. So starting point here is 1736. I told you about the importance of 1736. That is the year in which Leonhard Euler gave the solution for the Königsberg bridge problem. 1936 is the year when you got the first book in graph theory. So that is the importance of the starting point and end point, 1736 and 1936. And that was written by Jens Koenig in 1936 in German language, Theory of Finite and Infinite Graphs. Theory der Endlichen and Unendlichen Graphen. It's a German word, German book. Now, suppose I would like to write a book from 1936 to 2021. It is almost impossible single-handedly to write a book on graph theory 1936-2021. So the graph theory in the information has aged. Graph theory after the computer came has totally changed the face of graph theory, applications of graph theory, whatnot. It has changed a lot, even the shape of mathematics. So I will take a simple fun story. Okay, so my first question is, I have showed Euler's photo several times. How many times did I show Euler's photo so far? Okay, fine. So this is a famous problem now called 4-color problem or something. But I'm going to Indianize this problem and ask a question based on India. I'm going to color the different states of India. I'm not going to check my general knowledge or your general knowledge. How many states are there in India? I'm not going to ask this. Okay. So I'm going to color the states of India such that each adjacent states are colored differently. My question is, how many colors are required to color the map of India? Can I do with 2? Can I do with 3? Can I do with 4? Do we need 5 or what? So I'm going to Kerala, my own state. I'll come to Maharashtra later. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. Each of them, any 2 of them have a common boundary. Therefore, you agree with me that I will require at least 3 colors. Am I right? Hello, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I want to hear different sweeter voices other than Manish or Ganesh. Okay, so I want to hear as many voices as I can. And I want to choose the best voice, best singer. Okay. So there is a situation here. Karnataka shares with Kerala, and Kerala shares with Tamil Nadu, and Tamil Nadu shares with Karnataka. Therefore, simple common sense. Graph theory is common sense. Entire mathematics is common sense. Sometimes the common sense is not so common. That's the problem. Okay. So you look at 3 colors. So I'm asking slightly a technical question. Can I extend the three coloring of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka to the three coloring of entire India? There will be chakka. There will be a problem. Is my question clear? I know that three colors are necessary because Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu has any two of them have a common border. So as per the condition of coloring, adjacent states should be differently colors or they should not have the same color. My question is, what is the minimum number of colors required? Fine. So I have to start with here, comfortable with Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. I require three colors. So is it possible to color all the states of India with the three colors, or will you require four colors?
No, sir. Madhya Pradesh is sharing
Three colors,
six
sir.
states.
Yeah. So with the three, I cannot manage. With the two, definitely I cannot, because the first case itself requires three. So I am asking slightly a mathematical question. Can I extend the three coloring to the whole color, the whole India? You said that the answer is no, I cannot do. I will have trouble with Madhya Pradesh.
Yes. Share border with 7 states.
Yeah. Fine. So this was first asked by an innocent schoolboy, Francis Guthrie, and his brother Frederick Guthrie, British students. Sir, while coloring the map of Britain, UK, I required four colors. Is four colors sufficient? Is four colors necessary? Yes. I can give plenty of examples. Is four colors sufficient to color any map, any planar graph? I will come to the technical details later, with four colors. So his teacher was the great Augustus De Morgan. De Morgan formula, you know, right? De Morgan was his teacher. The teacher was a very good teacher. He said, I don't know the answer. Let me ask my teacher. Who was that? My teacher? That was great Hamilton. So a student's question in a classroom shook mathematics world for about 122 years. If you are lucky enough to get one student like that in your lifetime, you are a great teacher. Inspire your students to ask questions. You may not be able to give the answer. I don't claim that I can give all the questions that you are going to ask. But you try to be smarter by asking the teacher a question which the teacher will not be able to answer. There lies the real student. Okay, so Augustus De Morgan did not know. So that was asked again to Hamilton. Hamilton also did not know. So he presented as a problem, research problem, in one of the American Mathematical Society conferences to answer the great four-color problem. I'm not discussing this now, but I will show you that the news came in 1976 New York Times newspaper. This is not the first mathematical result in any newspaper, that is that of Srikhande. That was in 1959. When I told this in one of the conferences abroad, I remember, I think it was in Mexico, several countries, mathematicians from several countries were there. They said, no, it is not your Srikhande's thing that came in newspaper. It is the four-color problem, but that is not true. Okay, four-color problem solved in 1976 only, but Srikhande came into papers in 1959. Okay, but during the solution of the four-color problem, there are three people involved: Kenneth Apple, Wolfgang Haken, and Koch. Koch was a programmer, computer programmer, but they had an invaluable tool. Look at the editorial of New York Times in 1976. They had an invaluable tool that earlier mathematicians lacked, that is modern computers. The proof of the four-color conjecture is unlikely to be of applied significance. Suppose one of you asks, what is the application of four-color theorem? I don't know. But that there was an excitement in getting the proof of four-color theorem, because it was one of the best and the major intellectual feat that three human beings along with computer could settle about 122 problems. That is excitement in mathematics. If you ask, will you get money by doing mathematical problem? Nowadays, the answer is yes. You can get $1 million if you solve a problem. There are 6 such problems. But the mental satisfaction, the excitement that you get by teaching in your college and saying that something which the student may not know, And if your student asks me a question which I cannot answer, I will be the happiest teacher. Fine. Okay. Now, how do you get connected? I have not defined what a graph is so far. As far as possible, I will not define, because even without defining, you have understood what a graph is. I'll come to that later. So graph theory connects with the groups, vector spaces, matrices, the ranking algorithm, posets, lattices. There is a research group in Pune University working in graphs and posets and lattices. In fact, Vinay Joshi. Combinatorics, number theory, design theory, algebra, networks, mathematical chemistry, epidemiology, the present problem of finding COVID-19, because it's an epidemiological network. Okay, so graph theory is connected to many branches in mathematics that I mentioned here. So I'll go to some other puzzle again. I want to draw this figure without lifting your pen and without retracing it. If you give this problem to a 6th standard or 7th standard student, you will keep on trying to draw this. But when you know a little bit of graph theory, without trying to draw it, you will be able to tell whether it is drawable or not. Trace means I should draw this picture without lifting your pen or passing through each edge more than once. That is without overlapping. Okay. So diagram tracing puzzle also has something to do with graph theory. This appears in children's magazines in Malayalam. I have seen maybe in Marathi also. So can you draw this picture? You can try. Okay. I will stop with this another popular puzzle. You know, you have got 8x8 chessboard, right? What is the minimum number of queens that can be placed on the chessboard in an n/n chessboard? Let me do with 8x8 first as an example. In an n/n chessboard such that each square is occupied by a queen or attacked by a queen. My dear participants, you have not understood anything so far. I have taken up to 17 slides. Any point which I want you to repeat, I want to repeat, please feel free. So this I am going to repeat again. What is the queen's domination problem? I want to place.
Professor, already Professor Armu has came up with this problem.
Very good. Very good. But something which I am going to surprise you is that the answer is 5 for n is equal to 8.
Correct.
But there are 4,860 different solutions.
Possible. Oh, yeah.
That is something surprising. That is where the combinatorics plays. Counting. And the best book to discuss all such problems on chessboards, I'm sure that you can get at least 5 PhD theses out of this book, out of just 8x8 chessboard and its generalization to n/n. Queen's domination problem for general n/n is not solved. Only for 8x8 it is known. Maybe for some other values also. Fine. So if you look at the book Watkins Across the Board, the Mathematics of Chessboard 2004, you will get a lot of problems, puzzles like this. And there is also a beautiful shoelace problem. Shoelace problem book. In how many different ways you can use a shoelace? Something exciting. Okay, so this is the queen's domination problem, and the answer is 5. That is the minimum. I cannot do it with 4, and 5 is enough. So this is one of the solutions of this problem. Fine. You can place here, here, and here, and here, and 5 is minimum. I cannot do it with 4. Okay. Can you find a route starting from any vertex and visiting all vertices exactly once and return to the starting vertex? This is different from the problem of the Königsberg bridge problem, because I was putting a condition that I should not use the same bridge twice. Okay, here I should not use the same vertex. I cannot visit the same vertex. I am free to use same edge, but can you find a route starting from any vertex and visiting all other vertices exactly once and return to starting vertex? That is basically the Hamiltonian problem in graph theory. Okay, so the handshakes between two people have generalized to or increase the number of handshakes, number of people will what you get is a network. You'll have Indian Railway network, the network in the world. You have Air India Airlines network. Here network is, can I get a direct flight from Cochin to Mumbai or Pune? I can try for different routes and so on. This is the friendship network. This is the chemical network. As I told you, there is a hexagon. Therefore, it contains a benzene molecule. Fine. Okay. This is interesting. This is what's called Buckminster, not minister, Buckminster fullerene. Fuller is C60, fullerene is C60. This is the third form of carbon. People never thought that there will be third form other than graphite, and what is the other form of carbon? Two basic forms of carbon. Graphite,
C6.
No, graphite and diamond, isn't it? Basic form of carbon.
Right.
Okay. So somebody found that there is a third form of carbon, what's called fullerene. Okay. So C60, and there are general fullerenes also, C70, etc. So they got Kroto, Kerr, and Smalley got Nobel Prize in '96 for discovery of these molecules. When you project it to the plane, it has got 60 vertices, 12 pentagons, and 20 hexagons. I want to look at the stability of this molecule, and believe me, the stability of this molecule is now studied by mathematicians. In fact, spectral graph theory people, by looking at the spectra of this graph and checking whether what are the properties that you can have to make it stable, more stable. That is the stability of the Buckminster fullerene. This is the dome-shaped Buckminster fullerene shape in Toronto, sorry, in Montreal. This is Buckminster, who is not a scientist, he is an architect. So this is another structure, what is called a tree. There is no cycle there, right? Now, tree structure are applied in phylogenetics and so on. So this is Arthur Cayley. So I spent 2-3 minutes for what is a model. I am going to talk about discrete mathematical model or graph theoretic model. I already gave an example of a model which we did, that of the Königsberg bridge problem. So mathematical model is a description of a system using mathematical concepts and language. Where are we using it? The question should be, where are we not using it? Because physics, biology, earth science, chemistry, computer science, electrical engineering, economics, psychology, sociology, music, linguistics, philosophy, in all these branches and whatnot, you are going to have a mathematical model. And there's a famous quote, all models are wrong, but some are useful. There's absolutely no perfect model. Nobody can fit a perfect model, but some are useful models. The model that you are going to fit in for the epidemiological network for attacking COVID-19, the atmosphere model that you may have for studying what is happening in Kerala for last couple of days, heavy rain we have. Okay, mathematical modeling of climate analysis. There are two types of models. One is what's called the black box model, and the other is white box. What is black box model? Black box model is a modeling problem where there is no a priori information. There is no information about the modeling. Suppose there are some information, then that is what's called a white box model. Okay, so if there is no information, still in some situations, you may have to look at modeling. Such models are black box model. And there should be discrete models as well as continuous model. There should be linear model as non-linear model. And what we are going to discuss is what's called discrete mathematical model, that too which is dynamic. Dynamic means it keeps on changing. Another area of interest in graph theory is also mathematical chemistry. You talk about alkanes, methane, ethane, propane, butane, etc. They are all tree structures. There is no cycle. Okay, CH4, C2H6, C50, 100 H102. In general, CnH2n plus 2. Their molecular representation looks like this. It is going to be connected. I can reach from one point to another. And there are no cycles. Okay. Human brain with few billion, 80 billion or so neurons, and there some of them are connected. So you have a brain network. You have Facebook network. Okay. And you know, the basic principle of Facebook says that I need not be a friend with you, but you are now friend of a friend. Okay, when I started taking class, all the participants, none of the participants were known to me. None of the participants were friends of mine, but I established a friendship with Dr. Ganesh and Dr. Yashwant because you know them. You know Professor Vinayak Joshi. Okay, so the basic principle of Facebook is that friend of a friend of a friend of a friend is a friend. Fine. So this is the beauty of Facebook network. I may say that I know Pradeep Gunwant Golhare, not directly, but through some other friends. So you look at the Facebook, you have got a Facebook network. So basically, a graph is a symmetric binary relation. If you have two things, A and B, either A is related to B or A is not related to B. If A is related to B, you assign the value 1. And if A is not related to B, you assign the value 0. So a finite graph is nothing but a symmetric binary matrix. And from any symmetric binary matrix, I can construct a graph. So graph means a binary matrix, symmetry matrix, and it's also a collection of two element subsets of a non-empty set V. So if you ask me what is a graph, graph is a pair VE. V is a non-empty set and E is a two element subsets of V. I can choose two element subsets of an n element set in n choose two ways. So a complete graph will have n choose two vertices or edges. So for me, a graph is VE. It is nothing but a symmetric binary relation, and it is nothing but a symmetric binary matrix. And this is what is called the adjacency matrix of the graph. I'll come to this point later. So these are some examples of graphs. There are several matrices associated with the graph. Bapat's book on graphs and matrices is the best reference that I can suggest, R.B. Bapat. Okay, so adjacency matrix, incidence matrix, distance matrix, path matrix, Laplacian matrix, Seidel adjacency matrix, resistance matrix, and so on. Each matrix can convey some information about the graph. Okay. So these are all examples of graphs you know already. So let me take the next another 45 minutes. Up till this point, do you have any clarification required or anything which you have not understood? I've tried to put it in the simplest possible way. Now I will go slightly in a more technical. So at this point, I am happy. I believe that all the 27 are with me. Okay. So I'm going to talk about Srikhande. Srikhande was born on 19th October 1917 at Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. And he's blessed with two sons and one daughter. His wife passed away. He took 1948-42 BSc honors from Nagpur University. And in 1950, PhD from University of North Carolina under the guidance of R.C. Bose. He worked in designs, graph theory, combinatorics, etc. And he worked in BHU and University of Bombay for several years. Fine. So let me come to this point. Now we are into mathematics. So this is a famous puzzle or a problem which was posed by Euler in 1782. Let us try to go slowly. By the end of this class, you should be able to know what is the 36 officers problem and why is this easy or difficult, and what has Srikante done to do or solve this problem. Okay, if you have any concepts which are not understood, now I will technically have to introduce some technical terms, obviously. So what is that problem? Problem is, can you arrange 36 officers from 6 different regiments of 6 different ranks in 6 by 6 array so that each row and each column contained one officer of each rank and one officer of each regiment? Did you understand the problem? Hello? If you have not understood, I shall repeat again. I have got 36 officers from 6 different regiments. Gorkha regiment, Maratha regiment, such regiments are there in the Indian military, right? 6 different ranks, colonel, lieutenant colonel, major, and such things. So I've got 6 regiments and 6 ranks, totally 36. So it's a military parade is going on. So your superior officer asks all these 36 officers to stand in such a way that in a 6 by 6 array, such that each row and each column contained one officer of each rank and one officer of each regiment. Suppose there were only 16 officers, not 36. Okay, so left thing, this is a special name for this mathematical object. It is what's called a Latin square. I'll come to that point later. It looks like a matrix, but it is slightly different from matrix because each row and each column will contain only one entry. The same entry cannot come in some other place. Same row and same column. Okay, so if you have 16 officers, I am going to arrange the regiments as 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 4, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 4, 3, 2, 1. I am arranging the officers 1, 2, 3, 4 as 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 2, 1, 4, 3. So I'm going to replace 36 with 16 and 6 with 4. And read the problem. It is not the Euler's problem, but 16 officers problem. To arrange 16 officers from 4 different regiments and 4 different ranks in 4 by 4 array so that each row and each column contained one officer of each rank and one officer of each regiment. What I'm going to tell you now is that had it been only 16, I can easily solve this. Please, if you have any doubt to clarify, this is the first basic serious thing that I'm going to tell you. So is 16 officers problem solved?
Yes.
Who said?
Yeah, myself, Rupali Deshmukh.
Okay, fine. 16 officers problem is solved. How many are with her? Out of the 28 participants, how many are the strong supporters of Rupali?
Yes, sir.
Eh? Manish?
Yes, sir.
Pradeep, okay? We understood the 16 officers problem?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
There is no repetition 1, 1 anywhere here. There is no repetition of 4, 3 here because 4 represents the regiment number and 3 represents the rank. So 4, 3 means an officer of 3rd rank from 4th regiment is different from an officer of 4th rank and 2nd regiment. So all the 28 participants are happy that we have solved the 16 officers problem. Agreed? Is it okay for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
fine. Now, what is the difficulty and what is the basic mathematical thing that I have told? So that object is called a Latin square, which is different from a matrix in the sense that there cannot be a repetition of a any element in any symbol, any row or column. So a Latin square of order n is an n by n array with entries from 1, 2, 3, etc. n. It was first used by Euler, and that was Latin alphabets were used. That's why it's called Latin square. If we use a Marathi alphabet, it's called Marathi square. No problem. Or Tamil alphabet, you can put Tamil square. Fine. So said that each symbol occurs once in each row and once in each column. Such an arrangement of symbols is what's called a Latin square. So what is the difference between Latin square and a matrix? In matrix, that condition is not there, isn't it? If I write 1, 2, 3, 4, I can also write 1, 2, 3, 4 again. The same entry can repeat. Is it okay for you? Yes or no? So this is a special type of matrix in which there is no repetition in any of the rows or columns.
Yes, sir. The same solution can be generalized to n by n.
Yeah. Let me come to that. Okay. So I am going to ask, how many Latin squares of order n? You'll be very, very, very surprised to know that it's a very small number. Is it small number? No. N factorial grows faster than any power of n, isn't it? 6 factorial itself is 24. 10 factorial is huge.
Latin square means one number in each row and each column. That is called as a Latin square.
Yeah, with entries, okay. Latin alphabet.
Okay.
If you want to have Marathi square, you can have Marathi alphabets and then write it. No problem. You can have a blending between Malayalam alphabets and Marathi alphabets, just like Euler did. Greek and Latin.
So is this same as Sudoku?
It's a different type of square. Sudoku has some other conditions. Okay, right. So for every positive integer n, there is a Latin square of order n, because you all know what is a Cayley table of a multiplication table of a group. Each entry is different, isn't it? Am I okay? So
Yes,
simplest
sir.
example for your statement that there is a Latin square of order n for every n comes from the multiplication table of a finite group of order n is obviously a Latin square. So the first simplest question can be answered simply: for every n, there exists a Latin square of order n, which is nothing but the Cayley table of a finite group of order n. Obviously, converse is not true. That is, every Latin square does not come from the finite group. If you have a finite group of order n, you get a Latin square. Every Latin square cannot come from a finite group. So if you are interested in such queries, I would suggest a book, you can get the answer. But I'm not going to that line. That means which Latin square comes as the multiplication table of a finite group. Fine. So I want to say, just like in mathematics, I want to say different graphs, different matrices, different vector spaces, different groups. So I say that two Latin squares of order n are distinct. I want to count how many distinct Latin squares are there. So two Latin squares of order n are distinct. They are distinct as matrices. That is, at least one entry difference. Elements differ in at least one position. You know, when two matrices are different, isn't it? There is at least one entry where there is difference, then I said that they are different as matrices. Similarly, as Latin squares. So Ln denotes the number of distinct Latin squares of order n. To find a formula for the number of distinct Latin squares of order n, I require a Latin square of particular order, sorry, a particular pattern, what's called reduced Latin square. What is a reduced Latin square with symbols 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. n minus 1? Both first row and first column are in the standard order 0, 1, 2. So can anyone give me an example of a reduced Latin square of order 3 with symbols 0, 1, 2 or alpha, beta, gamma? I just wanted to check whether you have understood the definition of reduced Latin square. See, the first row could be 2, 0, 1, isn't it? Right? I don't want it. I want the first row to be, come on, tell me. First row should be?
Yes, first row 0, 1, 2, 3.
0, 1, 2, because 3 symbols I am using. So 0,
Yes.
1, 2. Next should be
0,
some,
1, 2.
yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Second row 1, 2, 0.
Yeah.
Third row 2, 0, 1.
Third row 2, 2, 0, 1.
Okay. So that's what's called a reduced Latin square. Fine. So how many distinct Latin squares of order n? See, I'm going to show you the strength and power of Srikande by just scaring you with huge numbers. Still, Srikande did something. That is the greatness. Okay, I'm going to publicize or popularize Srikande in Pune, though he was in Bombay for several years. Unfortunately, he's forgotten, like many other Indian mathematicians. How many mathematics teachers like us know what is the contribution of Harish Chandra, R.C. Bose, Patodi? We all know about Ramanujan. That's all. We don't know about Srikande. We don't know about R.C. Bose. We don't know about Harish Chandra. We don't know about Sarvadaman Pillai, Manonaniam Sundarnar Pillai, MS University. Okay, there are several mathematicians unheard, unknown, because there was a big tree, Ramanujan, and nobody bothered about what are the smaller trees. So our duty as a mathematics teacher is to take such people, take the biography of such people and tell your students, hello, of course, Ramanujan is the greatest, but there are some greater mathematicians like Srikande, Bose, and Patodi and others, right? So we look at G and the number of reduced Latin squares of order n. There is a theorem which says that the number of distinct Latin squares in terms of the number of reduced Latin squares, but that itself is not easy. L10. Can you read this number? No. I can just see this number. Right? Just 10 number of distinct Latin squares of order 10 is 10 factorial. That itself is huge number. 9 factorial and this beautiful huge number. When I take classes for students, and I used to take class from 5th standard onwards, same mathematics, but the explanation that I give is simpler. Okay, so how I want to know how to compare 1.5 into 10 raised to 86. Okay, I'm going to compare with the number of visible atoms in the universe. Fine. Number of visible atoms in the universe is only 4 into 10 raised to 78 approximately. And number of distinct reduced Latin squares of order 15 itself is 10 raised to 86. In your schools, we were scared by chemistry people and physics people, isn't it? Now you start scaring them. You say that there are of the order of 10 raised to 78. Are Baba, our reduced Latin square of order 15 itself is 10 raised to 86. So jokingly, what do? I take an atom and a reduced Latin square, put it in the atom, another Latin square and put it in the another atom. What will be more? Latin squares will be more. I don't have atoms to fill. Of course, I cannot do that. So just to encourage or inspire students, I take an atom, I take another Latin square, put it there, which remains. There will be plenty of Latin squares remaining, even of order 15. Okay, fine. Now, I want to talk about mutually orthogonal Latin squares. So one Latin square, I took a Greek symbol, not I. In fact, Euler took it. That's what I offered you. We can have a Marathi, Malayalam Latin square. Or So Narasimham is there. So Tamil and Malayalam, Latin square, not only Greek and the Latin. So first Latin square, I took Greek alphabets, and the second Latin square, I took Latin as square. So I am having two Latin squares of order n. I want to say that they are mutually orthogonal if when superimposed, each element appears exactly once. Now, gentlemen, 27 gentlemen and gentlewomen are there. Can you write 36 officers problem in the language of mutually orthogonal Latin squares? Those who have heard.
Excuse me, sir. Myself, Pradeep. What do we mean by superimposed?
Superimposed means, I suppose you are seeing me. You take one Latin square here and another Latin square here. I merge it.
Okay.
Okay. Now you recollect the 36 officers problem. Can you rewrite or retell the 36 officers problem in the language of mutually orthogonal Latin square? The forum is open. 36 officers problem is equivalent to constructing what?
Two Latin squares of order
So
Order
6.
Good.
Which we can superimpose so that every element, every place have two different elements.
So what I conclude at this point is problem of 36 officers is construct a pair of mutually orthogonal Latin squares of order 6. So I transferred the language of officers, regiments, and ranks to a problem of two Latin squares. Is this transition clear? This is all what we do in mathematics. If you have a problem in group theory, I may change to graph theory. If you have a problem in graph theory, I may take to group theory or vector space theory. If you have a problem in finite dimensional vector spaces, I may switch to matrices. This is the interplay that we do in mathematics, changing from one domain to another. Whichever is more comfortable for me. I am comfortable in graph theory. I am not comfortable in differential manifolds or matroids. So I bring to my domain, natural. Okay. So the 36 officers problem is this one, isn't it? Arrange 36 officers in different regiments of 6 different ranks in 6 by 6 array such that each row and each column contained an officer of each rank and one officer of each regiment is actually the problem. I could do it for this 16 because there exists a pair of mutually orthogonal Latin square of order 4, 2 of them, one here and one here, superimpose, you get 4 square. But what I require here is, my dear friends, is the transition from Euler's problem of 36 officers to construction of mutually orthogonal Latin squares of order 6. Is it okay? Did you understand the problem in this language, the language of orthogonal Latin squares? Yes or no? Manish said he has understood.
Yes.
I assume that the problem of 36 officers is now handy because it's a problem of orthogonal Latin squares. But you will see soon that it is not that easy. Unfortunately, Euler could not solve 36 officers problem. That is, he could not construct a pair of orthogonal Latin square of order 6. What is the trouble? So let me do it for n is equal to 2. Does there exist a mutually orthogonal Latin square of order 2? Unfortunately, it is not there. Why is that? Why is that? For n is equal to 2, it's a 2 by 2 Latin square, isn't it? Right? So 0, 1, 1 and 0 are alpha, beta, beta, alpha, or beta, alpha, alpha, beta. These are the only two Latin squares of order 2. You agree with me? 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1. Pradeep, is it okay? These are the only
Yes, sir.
two Latin squares of order 2. No, yes, yes, no. Yes, no, no, yes. So if you superimpose these two squares of order 2, you will not get a mutually orthogonal Latin squares because this entry is getting repeated. 0, 1 is repeated. Are you following me? Each row and each column should contain, there should not be repetition of the symbols. Is it okay? So there is no
Yes, sir.
pair of Latin square of order 2. So for n is equal to 2 gone. There is no, because these are the only two. Sonavane, is it okay for you? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
See, 0, 1, 1,
Yes, sir.
0
It's
and 1, 0, 0, 1 are the only two 2 by 2 Latin squares of order 2. How did I get an MOL? I want to superimpose. When I superimpose, this 0 is appearing here also. You just see it as a matrix. I forgot to draw the matrix symbol. Now go to n is equal to 3. The answer is yes. It's at least one pair of mutually orthogonal Latin squares because if you take 2, 1, 0, 0, 2, 1, 1, 0, 2 on the left, and 1, 2, 0, 2, 0, 1, and 0, 1, 2, there is no repetition of symbol in the 3 by 3, that is 9 entries. Therefore, there exists a pair of mutually orthogonal Latin squares of order 3. Suppose I am slightly giving some problems. Suppose Nn denotes the maximum possible number of mutually orthogonal Latin squares of order n. There is a theorem which says that the number of mutually orthogonal, maximum possible number of mutually orthogonal Latin square of order n cannot exceed n minus 1. Suppose you take n is equal to 10, what does that mean? Maximum possible number of mutually orthogonal Latin square of order 10 cannot exceed 9. And there is a research theorem which says that when n is a power of prime, the bound, upper bound n is equal to n minus 1. When nn is equal to n minus 1, there is a name, it is called complete set of mutually orthogonal Latin square. I am not in a hurry. I am going to stop at this point. I will talk about Srikanta graph tomorrow. I will help you to answer or appreciate the work of
Professor?
Srikanta.
Professor, in this theorem statement for each n greater or equal to 2.
Yeah.
But we came up with the 2 is not possible.
Pardon? No.
For
wait,
n
wait.
equal to,
Yeah, that's it. So there will be going to be only at most 1. N is a power of 2, prime power.
Okay.
There is no 2, only 1. That's the beauty.
but the n of n is the maximum possible number of MOLs.
Yeah.
But there is no
Yeah, there
superimposing
is
of
no.
Lucas.
There is no. That's what I'm telling.
Okay.
Okay. So when n is equal to 2, it is
Yeah.
only 1. There is no 2. There is only 1.
Right.
Fine. Good.
There is a 1 means there is a 1 possible number of MOLs.
Only 1.
But I'm
No. Only 1 Latin square of order 2. I cannot find a pair of mutually orthogonal Latin square of order 2.
So n of 2 will be 0, right? N of 2 will be 0.
no,
N of 2
according to the theorem, n of 2 is equal to 1.
No. N of 2 is equal to 1 because 2 is a prime power of a prime. Means I cannot find 2.
No,
I
sir.
cannot find a pair of mutually orthogonal
for-
Latin square.
For n equal to 2, there is no possible MOLs as previous slide. Am I right?
Yes.
Sir?
Yes.
But for the theorem states n at greater than or equal to 2, then n of n is equal to 1. That means there is a pair of MOLs. Am I understanding? Or
No. There is no
Pair is
pair.
not there. In the
Eh?
theorem statement, pair is not there.
Pardon?
According to
Yes.
theorem statement, for n equal to, there is a pair of MOLs. Am I right?
Is
No,
equal
no.
to 2, there is no
You
pair
see,
of
this
mutually
is-
orthogonal lattice pair.
This is
That's what
correct
I-
because if n equal
Sir?
to 2, n of
N
n
is
is
equal to
0
2.
and n minus 1 is 1, so there is no problem. There is upper
Yeah,
bound is
there's
1.
no problem.
No problem. 0 is less equal 1.
Okay.
1 is upper bound and 0 is the actual number. No problem.
Yeah. So I want to talk about RC Bose. I will take only 10 minutes and stop. I'm close to the power of Srikhande. So Moore and RC Bose did. Suppose Q is a prime power, say 9. Okay. And here he is going to connect it with finite fields. You know what about finite field? ZP. So finite field exists for when P is equal to prime, right? So Z5 is a finite field, but Z6 is not a field. Are they the only finite fields? No. A finite field of order n exists if and only if n is prime or power of a prime, isn't it? So RC Bose is an expert in finite field theory. So for Q is a prime power, the set of polynomials of the form ax plus y with a not equal to 0 in FQ represents a complete set of Q minus 1 MOLs of order Q. That is the theorem of Moore and RC Bose. That means he says how to construct a complete set of n minus 1 mutually orthogonal lattice squares. And there is a conjecture here, what's called prime power conjecture. There exists Q minus 1 MOLs of order Q if and only if. What RC Bose did was, if Q is a prime power, then it is fine. The other part is not still solved. That is what's called the prime power conjecture. There exists complete set of Q minus 1 MOLs of order Q. Whenever there are Q minus 1, I gave you the definition, complete. And that obviously uses the construction of a finite field. You know, you can how to construct a finite field of order, say 8. 8 is not a prime, therefore 8 will not come as ZP, right? Z8 is not a field. But there exists a finite field of order 8, which is 2 power 3. 3 is prime, 2 is prime, right? That is done by using what is called the irreducible polynomial. And that is the standard syllabus in any course in algebra for master's program, right? Construction of finite field. That's slightly tricky also. So this is Srikhande and this is Bose. There was no computer at that time, so he was taking a finite field of order 4 and trying to construct an example of a, checking whether the prime power conjecture is true or false. So these two books I recommend. This I like very much because if you want to look at the theory of orthogonal lattice squares or lattice squares, this is the best book. In my lecture notes, I have included these titles and a course in combinatorics. You know, here the cards are there and alphabets are there. Okay. So, come to the conclusion part. Euler was not able to construct a pair of mutually orthogonal lattice pair of order 10. So look at the story. For n is equal to 2, there is no. For n is equal to 6, unfortunately, Euler could not construct a mutually orthogonal lattice pair of order 6. For 10 also, he cannot. So Euler was prompted to conjecture in 1782 that if an n is an odd multiple of 2, so 2 is 1 into 2, 6 is 3 into 2, and 10 is 5 into 2, all are odd multiples of 2. Because Euler did not know about these things, he made a conjecture that for 2 it is not possible, obvious. For 6, he could not solve Euler's office's problem, 36 office's problem. So Euler made a conjecture in 1782 that if n is an odd multiple of 2, there is no pair of mutually orthogonal lattice pair of order n. You know what Srikhande, Bose and Parker did? Except n is equal to 2 and 6, there is a pair. Fantastic. That is the power of Srikhande. Shall I repeat? What was the conjecture of Euler? There is no pair. For n is equal to 2, not possible. For n is equal to 6, Euler could not solve the 36 offices problem. So Euler gave a conjecture that there is no pair of mutually orthogonal lattice square of order 2 which is n is an odd multiple of 2. I am short of time, so I am not going to the latest work on these things, but show you the power of Srikhande. So the great breakthrough announced in American Mathematical Society meeting in 1959, R.C. Bose, S.S. Srikhande, and E.T. Parker proved that there exist pairs of n by n Latin squares of order n for all n, except n is equal to 2, and 36 offices problem cannot be solved because of its transference to the language of mutually orthogonal lattice squares. So this came in Transactions of American Mathematical Society in 1960 and Canadian Journal of Mathematics, another journal, in 1960. So the news came in newspapers, April 27, 1959. And that I claim that this is the first mathematical news in any newspaper. My dear friends, if you find any other entry of mathematics before 1959, please inform me. I am hunting for that. As far as I know, there is no mathematics discussion in any newspaper before 1959. But Westerners will say it is 4-color problem. That is not true. It is our own Indian contribution. Okay, Srikhande, Bose, and Parker. In the editorial of New York Times, April 27, said that, and that's why they are called Euler spoilers. So this is the New York Times newspaper, and their photo come in the first page of the Sunday edition of this New York Times. And this is the actual solution they're doing actually. Okay, and this is there in the book which I mentioned, Discrete Mathematics Through Latin Squares. So if you are interested in this orthogonal Latin squares based on groups, there is a handbook of obviously design theory. Srikhande is basically a design theory man and association schemes. Tomorrow also, when I discuss Srikhande graph, I will talk about his contribution there. It's basically a design theorist. So it's balance incomplete block designs and so on. So there is a beautiful book by Deans, Latin squares. There is a handbook of combinatorial designs. I have given all these things in my references. I think you got that summary, isn't it? Abstract of the lectures. Okay. This I will discuss tomorrow. Oh, fine. So 5 minutes more. Any question is welcome. Whatever answers I know, I'm only happy to share with you. Tomorrow I will introduce Srikhande graph and go to the spectral analysis of that graph. So I will need a little bit of matrix theory. I know what is meant by spectrum. I am dealing with symmetric matrices. Therefore, all the eigenvalues will be real.
Oh, in graph theory,
Excuse me, sir.
decomposition and process.
Yeah.
In graph theory, the decomposition problem and factorization problem is using Latin square.
Sorry, what did you ask?
In graph theory, decomposition and factorization problem is using Latin square.
Yes, yes.
Is the connection between the Srikhande's Latin square to?
Yeah. See, not Srikhande's theory of mutually orthogonal Latin squares and getting connected to decomposition factorization. It is there in the book which I mentioned. I'm not done it for today. In this book,
Okay.
there is a lot of details.
Okay.
How to associate a graph out of a Latin square. I will discuss this partly tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Hello.
Yes, please.
I have read a book by Achyut Godbole, Nanodaya, and that book he has mentioned that fullerene carbon molecule. And
Okay.
he has mentioned there that it would be great if we can accommodate hydrogen molecules in that, then it will be very big solution to the energy problem of world.
Yes, yes.
In that kind. So can you please explain more about that fullerene molecule?
I'm sorry, I cannot do that because 1 minute. There is a mathematician by name, lady mathematician F.R.K. Chung, CHUNG.
Okay.
So I told you, this is a graph for us. This is the projection of Buckminster fullerene with 60 vertices, 12 pentagons and 20 hexagons. So they wanted to study the stability of this molecule. Now what mathematical chemistry people is doing is they have converted into a problem of spectral graph spectra working on this graph. So by looking at the spectral graph theory properties, these mathematical chemistry people are trying to look at the stability of the molecule.
Okay.
If you want to know more about this, just Google Buckminster fullerene. You will get plenty of new results on spectra and especially the works of Chung, CHUNG. She is a lady mathematician and a lot of research on the study of fullerenes. Not only C60, now it is C70, etc. It's also true for nanoscience and nanotechnology and such fields.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I just showed you the different applications of graph theory in other areas like chemistry, sociology, epidemiology, etc.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So one more addition. Professor S.S. Srikande's son, M.S. Srikande, also works in design theory. Professor Sharat Sane and M.S. Srikande have.
I think there is also one gentleman in Bombay University, Pavale.
Yeah, Rajesh Pavle is student of Professor Sharat Sane.
Yeah.
And now he's a professor in Mumbai University, and they are working on design theory with Professor M.S. Srikande now.
Yeah, Mohan Srikande.
Okay, sir. Thank you for a wonderful lecture.
Yeah, I'm there tomorrow also. If you have any clarification required for what I told today, please feel free to ask. And I could hear only the sweet voice of only 3-4. So I want to hear the sweet voices of another 24 tomorrow. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ganesh. Bye.
Sir, one more small addition.
Yeah.
As you told that Indian mathematicians are, even after Ramanujan, there are many, and we have to make them.
They should be made popular.
Famous also.
Yeah.
So when I was taking number theory course in the MSc second year class, I gave a mega project to the student that dig out all Indian mathematicians from ancient times.
There are many.
And then we found so many, and we made a big project, and then found a small kind of book there and kept in library to know that from ancient times to till date. And also recently we have added in our syllabus of number theory that Chakrawal methods of Bhaskaracharya and its comparison with Lagrange's method and all these things. P-Series notes and all these things. We are doing all these kind of things.
Very good, very good.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Shall I leave?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.